Welcome to the Reaching In podcast. I'm your host, Pastor David. The Reaching In podcast is a ministry of Calvary Chapel, Newport News, which focuses on your spiritual growth with an emphasis on sincere devotion, lifelong discipleship, and authentic discussion. Welcome to the Reaching In podcast. This is your host, Pastor David, and joining me again is my lovely co-host,
Anita.
That's right, folks. We are back. We are so thankful to be with you one more time. Actually, we are waiting for some bad weather to come through, so we're trying to be mindful of that as we listen. We pray and hope that everyone is being safe right now, that you're inside, that you got all your water and bread and all the other stuff that you need so that you can be safe during this impending storm. But we really want to say thank you to everyone who's been subscribing, who's been commenting on the podcast. We really enjoy interacting with the comments. We get excited every time someone comments and someone subscribes. And actually, we had someone give us an idea for an episode, and we're actually going to be doing that today based on a person's comment. So Anita, why don't you tell everybody what the topic is going to be and who commented?
So shout out to Ellen. Ellen had commented on YouTube about us doing an episode on Christian dating. So today's topic will be on Christians and dating, whether we should date, how should we date if we do. So to start us off though, David, what is your idea of a perfect date?
Ooh, a perfect date. Okay, the temperature is probably going to be in the upper 70s with a nice breeze, sunny. It starts off with us getting lunch and probably at a nice Asian restaurant, something like that.
Asian, that's interesting.
Yes.
I thought you liked Italian food.
I do like Italian food, but I'm trying to stay away from the carbohydrates. So I'm getting probably beef and broccoli or chicken and broccoli, something like that. And then we will go over to the theater to take in a film. This is, of course, not considering COVID, but we go to watch a movie, something that is engaging. I love Christopher Nolan films because they make you think. So probably we watch something like that. And then we take a walk after the movie to walk off the weight and the pounds that we've eaten and then discuss the film, possibly sit in the shade and discuss some more as we look into each other's eyes and realize that we are with the one that God had for each other.
Oh, that's so sappy.
Thank you. That's what you should say is thank you.
Where's that date? I'm
Hey.
here. I'm available. My calendar is clear, sir.
Well then, I'll have my people call your people.
Okay.
We'll set it up.
Okay,
We'll
let's
set it
do
up.
this.
Well, Anita, okay, so I've waxed poetic. What is the ideal date for you?
I like to do things. So yes, I like when I'm home, I do certain things like I'll read a book or I'll watch boring documentaries, as you put it. But if I'm going out on a date, I like to actually do something. So, it doesn't have to be fancy. I like putt-putt. Maybe laser tag. That would be fun for me. Just something fun to do. I've asked you before for us to, especially when we both were plant-based, if you wanted to take a cooking class together. I thought that would have been a lot of fun too.
Well, we cook a lot in the house, and you're my sous chef.
Cook a lot, but we do. Some nights we'll try a new recipe together.
That's right.
But you're the better cook.
Well, as you can tell, we're going to be talking a lot more about Christians and dating. And we wanted to let you know that, while we're going to start off the discussion and we're going to get into it in a more casual way, if you want some solid biblical teaching on it, some more in-depth teaching, Pastor Tony has his series going on every Wednesday at 7 called CCNN Classics, where he's going through the entire book of the Song of Solomon, which is a very spicy book, by the way, but it will teach you some great lessons on how to approach love, dating, relationships, sex, all those things. So we encourage you here at the Reaching In podcast to take advantage of those teachings And you're going to learn a lot about what God has to say about how to approach relationships. Pastor Tony has some great personal anecdotes. It's very practical teaching on that. So when we return, we're going to get right into dating Christians and should we or should we not date. So hang in there. We'll be right back.
To start us off, David, should Christians date? And if so, how?
Should Christians date? I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that Christians should engage in getting to know other Christians to see whether or not that person, that man or that woman, whether or not they are potential marriage material. They should engage in group dates, things of that nature. They should talk about sermons. They should go out, do ministry together even. That's a great way to get to know people. So in that sense, yes, Christians should date. However, in the secular sense of the word date, which means to go out with someone, to engage in experimenting in physicality, sexual relations, first base, second base, third base, in the sense of increasing your level of physical interaction, not just talking and getting to know someone emotionally and mentally and spiritually, but to know them physically. No, because the world tends to consider that to be dating. Dating to the world is progression from kissing to other sorts of groping and so on and so forth. And the pinnacle of secular dating is we moved in together. Like that's the big thing that the world considers to be a victory in dating, is to move in together. It's a big step. It's a big commitment. And unfortunately, that is dangerous for a Christian to do, because that is against scripture and it can lead to a host of pain and sorrow. So yes and no. Yes in the biblical sense, no in the physical, secular, worldly sense.
I would say that unfortunately, on the last point that you made, there are more Christians or people who profess to be Christians today that don't see anything wrong with sex outside of marriage.
I would agree with that.
I've encountered more Christians that doesn't seem to be an issue with them, or they don't consider it sinful to participate in something like that. I would agree with you as far as what you said about Christians dating. When I was younger, I would have in my group, my church group, we had males and females, and we weren't necessarily dating each other, but we would go out with each other.
Right.
And there was a benefit to that because none of us were emotionally attached. Well, at the time, none of us were emotionally attached to each other. Mm-hmm. So you got an opportunity to see other people. You got to see the guys and how they acted, how they interacted, how they treated the other women that were in the group.
Right.
How they acted with each other. And so there was a benefit to that. And they got to see that from us too.
Right.
To kind of get an idea before it even got to, well, I want to be with you. And then your emotions and all those things mm-hmm. are attached. But I think that dating can prepare you for marriage. You get to see those qualities in a spouse, and it helps you to gauge where you are in becoming a spouse, in a sense. And it can be fun, just to be able to spend time with someone. But I will say that the disadvantages could be that you have to be careful of being reckless with someone else's emotions. If you're not ready to be committed to a person, to date, and I guess maybe we need to define what we mean as far as the pro dating. Are we saying boyfriend, girlfriend? Or are we just saying the idea of going out with different people? What would you say to that?
Well, let's look at the secular world for a moment, right? There's a lot of celebrity dating shows and reality dating shows, and they'll have those moments where all of them are in a group, but everybody fights for that one-on-one date, right? Mm-hmm. Look at The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, all these other shows. And while I don't commend that way of romance and looking for love, I will say it's funny how the world even respects the difference between group activities and that prized intimacy time.
Mm-hmm.
And so Christians should understand that there's a difference. You were talking about the advantage of the group date or the group outing is that I get to see this other person. It's kind of like a proving ground. Can you stand out from the rest? Can I see you in a place where I can see whether or not it's worth even going into a one-on-one situation? Because the minute you isolate that person and you and that other person go out, it's different. There's an increase in intimacy. Now you're focusing on this person. It's not just, hey, brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so is really cool. They're funny. I love when they're around. They're always an encourager. Now it's just you and me. And so that changes a lot of different things, and it ups the ante, so to speak, in everything. Now there's a chance for you to stir those things that may have been sort of just embers. Now it can become a flame because now you're giving this person one-on-one time. And so if the world sees a difference in that, Christians should not just value it, but be serious about it. But
I'm saying that, for the sake of discussion, for the sake of the podcast, are we referring to Christians being free to date different people? Or are we talking about once they decide to commit to dating one person?
Well, in the biblical sense, and I believe that in Bible times, marriage was considered different than it is today. Okay, so marriage in those times was a serious thing, and it meant the merger of two families, and there was a process of betrothal and all these other things. It wasn't as nonchalant as we are about, well, I'm going to date this person today and I'm going to date this person tomorrow. Who you were betrothed to was serious, and you didn't just get engaged to one person here and then still have a couple of chickadees on the side,
But is that cultural or is that biblical?
Oh, I agree. It's cultural, but I think there should be a reverence there. You said to value people's emotions. If you're going to go around just dating people here, there, and everywhere, especially, and I'll make this caveat, if you're a Christian and you're an adult of marrying age, you're 18 or above, when you're dating somebody, the idea is that in the biblical sense, I'm not just hanging out with you because I'm lonely on a Friday night. I'm dating someone because I have the desire or the prospect of one day getting married. So Christians don't just date because we're bored or we're lonely. You're not supposed to. I believe that we should date because we're really pursuing a mate. We want someone in our lives that loves Jesus so that we can be in covenant relationship with them, pleasing the Lord and living for him.
Well, I know some people, there's a YouTuber that I follow, and he and his wife, actually, he just recently got married, but he was sharing how before he met her, there were 3 women that he was talking to. Mm-hmm. And that he was kind of just getting to know them and talking with these 3 different women, mm-hmm. so that he could get an idea as to whether he wanted to pursue them. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was asking, are we talking about somebody who is kind of committing to being with one person, they're dating this person, or are we talking about people that are dating, John on Friday, but then...
Well, I'm gonna, here's where Pastor David is gonna give an opinion. This is not scriptural, but my personal belief and the way I went about it is that I took it very seriously when I would talk with anyone of the opposite sex. When I was a teenager, late teenager, going into adulthood, college age, I did not want to have one-on-one time with just anybody. And if I was going to have one-on-one time with you, I took it seriously, and I would consider this person as a potential, and that's me personally. Mm-hmm. Now, how that particular YouTuber was able to balance 3 different women, and I'm not saying he was being serious with them, but me personally, I can't focus on more than one female at a time.
Yeah, and he said he wasn't being serious with them.
Yeah.
And I would hope that they understood where he stood with them. Mm-hmm. He said as soon as he started dating his wife, that he immediately let them know that he wasn't going to continue the relationship that he had with them. Mm-hmm. However they defined that relationship.
And I had a similar conversation I had to have with some people. It was direct. With others, it was more not direct, but they just got the drift. After I met Anita, I stopped talking to a lot of these young ladies. Even though we were a fellowship group, we were a youth group, I just stopped talking to a lot of them. And so one of them in particular, I was like, we're not going to talk anymore because I've met someone and I'm pursuing them. And so to me, to pursue multiple women at once, my personal opinion is you want to give that person the dignity that they're worth and the respect that they're worth. My thing is, if you really think that this young lady or this young man is someone that is considerable, give them the prayer that's needed, give them the attention that's needed, and don't try to balance all three of these people as you're trying to, especially if you're going to have one-on-one dates with three different people. I don't recommend that, because your heart can be torn in different directions, because you can be drawn to different things in each one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point too. And I can't speak for this person, but I just, in talking with different people, I do know that, you shared your opinion, but other people's opinion might be that, well, it's not that serious. Like I'm not seriously dating three people. I go out with this person, and then I go out with this person, and I have fun with this person, and we do something different with this person. Yeah. And so,
hey, if they want to do that, that's fine. I'm not going to say that's sinful. I'm just going to say, as for me, I couldn't handle that.
I mean, I think that there's advantages and disadvantages with it as well.
Yeah.
But going back to, should Christians date? Another disadvantage, besides that, you have to be careful. You can't be reckless with someone else's emotions. And
you shouldn't.
Even in what we were just saying, that he may see it as he's just lightly dating these three women. But if one of them starts to feel differently, how do you deal with that? Did you potentially create something that maybe you could have avoided had you not been so relaxed or casual?
And nobody likes that feeling. I'm sure those of you who are listening, you've had situations where someone regarded you as a friend and you didn't really regard them as a friend, or someone really thought that you were into them and you're like, I'm not that into you. And you hate to be that person that has to break it to them like, no, that's not really what was, no, I'm sorry. And you hate when it's done to you.
Yeah. When
you thought something, I've had that happen when I was in high school. I thought this young lady was into me, and turns out that she wasn't. And it hurts. It hurts because some people, like you said, they don't regard intimacy with the same level of seriousness that you do. And so a one-on-one date for you is, we just went out for coffee. It's not a big deal, but the other person's like, whoa, they actually paid attention to me. They wanted to go out with me. And so you want to be clear and upfront with what your intentions are, and that helps.
Yeah, and that's what, shout out to Pastor Michael. That's something that he and Mata have said over the years. Amen. And encourage people with, is define the relationship. Mm-hmm. When you are going out with someone, it is helpful, at least how I understand their explanation of it, is that you both know where you stand with each other. And that as your relationship progresses, that you still know where you are and where you stand, and that one person isn't thinking, hey, he's gonna give me that ring, and then he's just thinking, I just like looking at your face on a Friday night, but you're both on the same page. Yeah. And therefore it's less likely that you're going to get your heart broken, because he's not he's not there, and therefore maybe I don't need to let my heart go there. Maybe I don't need to go thinking that we're going to get married. If he is just thinking, hey, I just like spending time with you. I'm not saying marriage. I just like to spend time with you.
Well, I mean, I think that's what Christians, we tend to talk about having these conversations, but the world doesn't want to have those conversations because those are awkward. Everybody thinks love is this emotional thing. That it just flows. It's organic. I went out with her, and then before you knew it, we were enraptured in love, and one date became three, and three became a month, and before you knew it, I was swept by love. And what you just talked about is kind of a buzzkill to really have those conversations, either before the date happens or even after, to really check with the person and be like, look, I don't want you to think this, or hey, I just want you to know we're going out for coffee. It's just coffee, okay? I don't want you, please. I just want to talk with you. I think you're cool, but I don't want you to get your heart, caught up, because I respect you. You know what I'm saying? And those are the conversations. You never see those in the movies. You never see those in the sitcoms. You definitely don't see them in the soap operas. Love is never the person. You never see the two people have that kind of conversation where they declare the terms or the boundaries or even the expectations. So that's another difference between a Christian's approach to dating versus the world's.
Yeah. But another disadvantage that I would say to Christians dating is similar to what you were saying, as far as marriage isn't selfish. So dating shouldn't be either. And Absolutely. If you are going to date someone, then you have to realize that it has to be to the benefit of the other person. It's not self-seeking. If you're going to date as a Christian, my opinion, it should not be self-seeking. Yes, it's fine to want to go out and have a good time. I don't think that that's wrong, but it shouldn't be that I'm looking to get my needs met by this other person, because that's not what marriage is supposed to be about either. And I think that that's something too that's different than worldly dating, is that in a worldly sense, they do focus more on how that other person makes me feel, and then they use the terms that they're falling in love or things like that. But it tends to be self-centered. And if that person doesn't give them the feels, then they cut that person loose. But in a marriage, we know that that's not the direction. It's not inward to you. It's what are you doing to serve that other person?
It's others focused, but it's also upward focused too.
Yes.
It's God. Does this person have to be in my life? Are they going to help me serve you? If this person is going to be an impediment to my walk with Christ, well, let me know. And if this person is going to aid me, if this person is going to help me to serve you, if us being together pleases you, oh God, then that's great. Let's go. And if me being with this person displeases you, Lord, then I've got to cut this, or there's got to be a correction made, And so it's others focused. We should consider the other person's emotions. Definitely. We should also consider, Lord, what do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't make myself, and you gave Adam, when you saw that Adam was alone in the garden, you said, it's not good that man should be alone. You created a helpmate suitable, comparable to him. And so if this person is the one, yes and amen. If this person is not the one, then Lord, let me know, because what good is it for you to draw closer and closer to someone that God's like, that's not the one. That's not the person for you.
Yeah. We'll talk about that more later. My next question would be, do you think that teenagers should date?
Should teenagers date? That's a tough one. We'll be right back and I'll give you my answer.
So before the break, I was asking you, do you think teenagers should date? You seemed be taken aback by that. So
well, because I don't want to get in the flesh as I answer this. I would say a big, loud, boisterous no.
Okay.
No.
Why?
I personally believe, and again, this is my opinion, that dating should lead to marriage. You don't want to use the Bible as my example. In Song of Solomon 2 verse 7, Song of Solomon 3 verse 5, and Song of Solomon chapter 8 verse 4, the same phrase is used. It is, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. And the word used for stir up or nor awaken is the same phrase, and it means to open the eyes, to arouse oneself, to awaken, or to incite. And why I bring up those verses and that phrase is because when you start to date, it starts a process, a potential process, right? It's a process that could lead to hearts being knitted together, emotional ties. It could lead to heartbreak. It could lead to intense passions. It could lead to a lot of different things. It's like getting onto a roller coaster and then as it starts to move, saying, I got to get out. Sometimes, look, you can't get out until the ride is over. And then a lot of times for me, I think that teenagers can start up engines, as Pastor Tony talks about, again, CCNN Classic plug, Wednesdays at 7, but you can start processes that you can't stop. You can start processes that were meant to be fulfilled in the marriage relationship. And so when you have teenagers, and let's be real for a second, you still living at your mama's house. You don't have a job, or if you do, it's a part-time job. If mom and dad are giving you money for dates, or you're getting dropped off, at the theater or wherever, that's foolishness to me. You're not really dating. You are dating under the guise of your parents.
Okay.
And so I would say, if you want to go out on group hangouts, that's fine. But one-on-one dating, like you going to a restaurant with a lady by yourself and all that, absolutely not. I, for one, am not for that, because you get your heart attached to this young person while you're still growing and trying to figure out where you're going with your life. And I need you to be focused, because you don't have a job. You don't even know what your career is going to be. You probably don't even know what your major is going to be. And if you do know those things, this person could be dangerous in that they can redirect your passions. Let's say you're getting ready for college. You're a senior in high school. You really want to go into this particular major, and you want to go out of state to this great school. And we've seen it happen in the movies, sitcoms, and in real life. Young lady, young man, they are career minded. They're going to get themselves set up for a job in a future. They get wrapped up in a person, young man, young woman. Their hearts get intertwined. Before you know it, they don't want to go away to school. They don't want to go and pursue that career. They want to pursue this person. And before you know it, they've got a kid or something, and their dreams are now put on hold for 4, 5, 6, maybe a decade before they can go back to school and get these things fixed together. I say all that to say a big fat no.
I see that we need to stop your Lifetime movie subscription, because you're watching way too much of that.
It happens.
I mean, yes, it happens.
And by the way, it happens a lot.
But another view on it could be that your teen years can be a safe place to have parents guide you through how to do that. When you get to be an adult, there's like this idea in our society that you will figure things out, that you'll just know what to do. We actually will go over the rules for a Zoom meeting more than we will talk about how to conduct yourself when you are out with someone else, or how to date, or red flags to look for. Some of those things aren't discussed when it comes to young people dating, or teenagers and how they feel. Yes, we know that their hormones are going all over the place. We know that emotionally they can be all over the place because they are too old to be children, but they're not adults yet either. And so they're just caught in the middle of all of these things. And so I think that another opposing view is just that you could use that time as a parent to monitor. I'm not talking about 13-year-olds dating. That's not what I mean. But if somebody is 16, 17, 18, perhaps that could be a time that you use, for lack of better phrasing, as training wheels to show them.
Well, that requires a parent to come alongside and, like you said, really walk them through. I imagine some level of a debrief after a date. So what happened, and what could you have done better? And what did she say? Or what did he say? Did he touch you? And I'm not saying that isn't plausible. I'm just saying that when you go out on dates, when you're out there on the front line, so to speak, theoretical talk about dating is great. But when you get out there on the front lines and you're with that other person, how many teenagers would be willing to subject themselves to dating by numbers, so to speak, or having your parent walk you through that kind of thing?
But that's what I was getting to, is what I would want to know, if for me to answer that question about teenagers dating, is, well, what is the purpose of them wanting to date? Like, why do they want to date? Because I would want to know that. Is it to fit in? Then no, you don't need to date. Is it just for fun? Okay, I mean, that to me might be the time in your life where you can casually date, just to get to know people, or, to see how different people act. But I would also want to know, are they mature? Not just developmentally, but spiritually, are they mature? Because if they're not, then no, you don't need to be dating anybody. Would they be able to handle a situation if someone was making advances towards them? Would they know what to do? Because if they don't, then once again, you don't need to. My parents, they were very particular about that. They would say that we were allowed to date. We just weren't allowed to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
That's cute, by the way.
That's
real cute.
That's what they would tell us. Which ended up, none of us really dated. None of us really dated when we were
Circle
younger.
gets the square.
However, I know the reason why they were saying that, because they wanted us, my mom especially made it very clear that she did not want us hearing from another boy about our worth or about what we should do and not do. That wasn't his place. And I agree with that. I would not want, and it goes the other way too. Like, because girls can be just as bossy and demanding when it comes to a boy and what he should wear and whom he should talk to and who he should hang out with and things like that. And those would be my concerns, and what would make me say, I don't think so. If that's the type of person you're attracting, is somebody who feels like they need to control and dominate you, that is never anyone's place in your life. That is for the Lord. That's why he's called Lord, is because he gets to decide what you do and where you go. And he does those things, but not a peer and not a boyfriend, girlfriend, and not your date. They don't get to do those things.
Well, I would agree. If a parent is willing, if a husband and wife, if a single parent is willing to go through as methodically as you said, and to really kind of walk them through the dating process and evaluate and test them with little bits of freedom here and there, I'm all for that. I'm down with that. And I think you're absolutely right that it's a good training ground. But parents, if you're listening, you have to be willing to do that. You can't just put dating on autopilot and just let them figure it out, or trust that, well, they go to church, they know what not to do. Because young people are known for one thing, their passions. They're driven by passion. I'm bored. I want to do this. I don't want to do that. They're not really purpose-minded. They're passion-minded. And so when you give children, teenagers freedom, you have to monitor that to see how they dealt with the freedom. You know, can they handle a curfew? I mean, if you can't handle a curfew,
no, then you can't handle.
We ain't even talking about this. Like, if you can't clean up your room, I mean, there are levels to this. You want to go out with this young lady, this young man, and you can't even make up your bed. Oh, we not even talking about this. Come on now, level up.
But I will say that I think that there's a lot to say about friendship in our marriage. That's the one thing, and I've heard many other couples say it as well, is that their spouse is their best friend.
Pastor Tony actually mentioned that in his walk down memory lane when he was talking with his wife, Miss Janice, and they were talking about their relationship, that they're friends.
Yes.
You know?
And so the training ground in your teenage years could be a wonderful opportunity for you to develop your friendship skills. Mm-hmm. Are you a good listener? Do you know what to do when this person is upset, when they've had a bad day, when, or even when they've had a good day? Like, do you have balance in your life? Are you able to just be there for somebody else? And not that you lay down your life like you never do anything else, but you just kind of, I'm not talking about worship. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm not talking about worshiping another person, but that you are able to be there for them, support them, show them love. Mm-hmm. Developing friendship is, I think, so underrated, but it is very important. Mm-hmm. Because that is what is going to help you when you do get into a marriage, is if you are a good friend.
Right. And I think that being a good friend is harder than it looks. A lot of times people are so quick to jump into relationships without building friendship. Friendships have to be tested just like any other relationship. And if you can't pass the test of friendship, why are we going into this intimate relationship part? You're right. It can be a great time, especially if you can get into a friend group with like-minded believers. You really can see whether or not this person over time, are they really who they say they are?
Are they loyal? Do they run around gossiping behind people's backs? And right. I'm not just talking about like, this is your girl. I'm talking about even for the opposite sex. You mm-hmm. watch them. Are they a good friend? Can they keep things in confidence? Mm-hmm. Because, and like I said too, you developing those skills in yourself so that you can be that friend to your future spouse.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I said before that we were going to talk about how can someone know if they've met the right one?
Oh man. How can they know? Well, we know this is a familiar verse. Every time we talk about dating, if you've been a Christian for a while, you've probably heard the phrase, unequally yoked, or that terminology. It comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14, and it reads, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? And what communion has light with darkness?" And so that verse is used to express this idea that when you're in a relationship with someone, you're yoked with them. And we know a yoke was what was put over animals to keep them linked together. When a farmer was plowing the fields, the animals, the oxen or what have you, the cattle, they would keep them in a straight line attached to one another so that they could plow straight lines in the fields. But you're yoked with that person. Like, you go at the pace of each other. You have to be in alignment with one another. It's kind of like Amos 3:3. How can two walk together unless they agree? And so the idea is that if you're thinking about the right one, it's someone comparable to you. Adam had a mate, Eve, that was created that was suitable for him, comparable to him. And I think when you're going to begin to answer that question, how do you know if the person is the one? If you are a Christian, basic question, are they a Christian? I think if we can't get past that question, and we don't mean, because we've come across this in counseling environments, if you ask the person yes or no questions, that's not what we're talking about. Because even people in the world know how to say yes and no. If I asked you, Anita, do you believe that Jesus Christ lived, died on a cross, was buried, and rose again from the dead? Do you believe that?
Yes.
Someone can say yes, but not really mean it the way you mean it. You believe it, and you've put faith to your facts. You believe those to be historical facts, and you've put biblical faith behind it, which means you put action behind that. Because of that, you've placed your trust in him, and you're living according to his word, because what he accomplished on the cross, you have accepted as payment for your sins. Many times people will just answer yes, and we're like, oh, well, that's great. Let's move on to the marriage arrangements. Like if you give someone that kind of yes, no question, they're going to say yes. Especially if you look good, they're going to be like, yeah, absolutely. I believe that. Yes, Jesus. And so, we have to be careful with giving people questions without evaluating fruit.
Yes.
Fruit is the most important thing. We shall know them by their fruit, not just by their profession or their words, because anybody can say yes to the historical facts. Anyone can say, yes, I believe. But then when push comes to shove, when the rubber meets the road, you put in your phrase there, whichever phrase you like. When it all boils down, you really get to see what that person is like. And we've gone through unfortunate situations. And Pastor Tony has said this many times in sermons. When pressure comes, when stress comes, when problems come, you really get to see the real person come out. And sometimes people have been duped by people who said the right things. They spoke the Christianese. They did everything that the one should, quote unquote, say. But then when it came to have the heart of the one, they didn't really have it.
Yeah.
So are they a Christian? Question number one.
Yes.
And do they have Christian fruit on those branches?
Yes. I got advice from a Christian mentor, and she would tell me, she said, don't ignore the red flags.
What are some of those?
What she meant was when you are with someone and you see something and that's a red flag, she meant don't ignore that. But I think that a red flag would be, even with what you're saying, like this person professes to be a Christian, but you don't see them reading their Bible, or they're not sharing the things that they are learning from God. That they don't have a testimony. They don't have a praise in them. Like they don't really even bring up God. That's a red flag. Yeah. And don't ignore the red flag. But besides someone being a Christian, I think if we are Christians, we should know that. We should. Unfortunately, I don't know whether all those that profess to be Christians actually adhere to that.
But see, this is where a big point comes into play, is that for the Christian, you're trying to evaluate fruit. And evaluating fruit has nothing to do with passion. It's whether the fruit is there or not. The world tells you, let love lead you. Love is like a feeling. It's you fall into love. That's the phrase the world uses. I fell in love, meaning like it was a trap door or something and you just fell down it or something and it's uncontrollable.
Well, there's lots of other things you fall into that you don't like.
Well, hey, that's for another podcast. But because the world sees love as a passionate wave that just overcomes you under its rip current,
Or this magical.
It's magical.
You can't control it.
Cupid hit me with its arrow and I was just swept up by love, and then you're swept into someone's bed. And so as Christians, the person can look like they're the one, sound like they're the one, but only through the testing of time can that person really prove themselves to be the one. Now, full disclaimer here, Miss Anita and I met and were married in 8 months. Okay,
so how did you know? Like, because you just said something about time, and that does not seem like a lot of time.
It doesn't, but I would say that there isn't a standard amount of time. Some people develop their relationship from long distance. Some people develop their relationship close proximity to one another. I would say the most important things are that you really get to know who the person is, not just what they look like physically, because we can get swept up in the visual. Men are very visual. And so we can get swept up in how they look and all these other things, but really, who is this person? Because if this person is the one, you're thinking about the one who you're going to spend the rest of your life with, not just take pictures, not just go out on vacations, but this is the person that I want to be with every single day of the rest of my foreseeable life.
Yeah. And I would say that, our relationship started even before we met, in a sense, because it started by us praying.
Yeah.
We were in prayer for who this person would be, so that it didn't come down to, well, now that I'm face to face with him and I see his chocolate eyes and I gotta have him. It's not just that. I've been praying all along, and I know the things that I've been asking for, that I wanted a spiritual leader, that I wanted someone who would be strong and that we would be compatible, not just with our likes and our interests, but even where we are spiritually. I've asked God for those things, so that when this person comes along, it's almost like God is going to hold me accountable, because I know what I've prayed. I know what I've asked for from him. So if somebody different walks in, somebody who doesn't really think about him, or we're not compatible, the Holy Spirit's going to be tapping me like, wait a minute, that's not what you asked for. Mm-hmm. And so it's up to me, or whomever's asking this question, how do I know it's the right one, to hold to what you've already been asking for, what you've already prayed for. I had a youth leader. It was an adult ministry, like young adult ministry. He had us write out the things that we wanted. Mm-hmm. He had us write out a list of the things. And so, we did that exercise, and I did hold on to that, because that became something that I prayed, not to turn you into like an item, or, like it was some sort of.
Was he 6'2"? Was he dark chocolate?
I'm not going to answer that.
Oh, okay. Did he have a nice bald shaved head?
He's here. How about that?
Ooh.
He's here now.
Ooh.
But I think that is important, that you before you start getting serious with people, mm-hmm. to just ask yourself, what is it that you desire, that you want, and then the things that like are non-negotiables mm-hmm. for you. I think that that's important, that you know that. So mm-hmm. when it comes to knowing if someone's the right one, I think you'll know if you have been praying about this mm-hmm. person, and that you've put the thought into it.
And I think that's an amazing point. Pastor Tony has pushed so much that we would become a people of prayer, and that the church would return to being a house of prayer. And I think one of the things that we could add to those of you who are listening who have teenagers, if they really have a desire to date, bring that to prayer as a family. It's funny when you bring things into the light, how it changes the mystique. Some
yes.
of the reasons why young people love dating is because it's, what can we do without our parental supervision, or what can we do on our own, playing grown up, so to speak. But when you say, you know what, you have a desire to be with someone of the opposite sex, and I think that's a good desire, let's take it to prayer. You'd be surprised how much they're like, you'll really get to see whether or not they really are serious about finding a mate, like someone who loves Jesus they could eventually be married to in the future, or whether or not this is just, as Anita was saying, something to take care of your passions and your carnal lusts. Something
to honor God with. And
exactly.
I think that's a good point too, is that, yes, some people might be like, what? Why would I want to do that? That's weird. Mm-hmm. But if we're called to honor God in everything that we do, absolutely. Whether we eat or drink and whatever we do, that we're supposed to honor God, then certainly in something like this, in something that's so serious that will affect the rest of your life potentially, of course you want to bring that before God.
Now, how long did you pray for your spouse or pray about your spouse before you actually met me?
I mean, I think it was years. It was probably, not like every single day but I would say from time to time for about 11 years.
And the reason why I asked you that question is because the same thing for me. I prayed a lot about...
Well, you said like second grade.
Well, okay. I was a very serious young man. I was looking for the one a long time ago. I was like, Lord, where is she? The sister that we could live for you and die for you on the mission field. I've always been serious like that. But really and truly, the reason why I asked that is because we prayed years for this person. We would pray for the unknown spouse.
Yeah.
Whoever they were.
You were a teenager?
Yeah.
I was too.
Yeah, we were praying.
I mean, that is a good time to start those things.
Yeah. And there were weekends, there were nights where people were going out and you weren't going out. And all we could do is pray that God... I mean, there were times where as a man, and I'm not afraid to say it, I would be like, God, I just want to know if she exists. It's hard right now, and I just want to know. And then it went to, Lord, protect her and keep her, and one day I'll know who she is. I just wanted to have a glimmer of hope, and I didn't get it all the time. Sometimes it was hard. There were some hard nights, and that's when I just played video games and wallowed in other sorts of activities. But no, there were some. God wants to know, how bad do you want what you want? And do you want it on my terms, or are you going to get frustrated and just go out and do your own thing? Yeah. You're almost at the end of this episode. We just want to say thank you for listening. Consider leaving us a comment or sending us an email at reachingin@calvarynn.com. Like the podcast, and hey, we'd love if you'd subscribe because it helps the podcast to grow and reach more and more people. And if you want to get into some even deeper teaching, of course, you can continue to listen to the Sunday messages on the mobile app, as well as the Word Made Plain radio podcast, which is available on the mobile app as well. Thank you so much, and let's get back into the episode. So Anita, what are some practical tips based on what we discussed in this episode that we can leave the listening audience with, and then we'll recap and close out?
Some of these things we have brought up. My number one tip would be to pray.
Can't go wrong with prayer.
Can't ever go wrong with prayer, and to have others praying for you as well. If there's someone, whether you are serious with this person or not, I think that it's just a good idea to have friends, family members, just praying about the situation. As we said before too, being a friend to this person, just not romantically being involved or always thinking romantically about the person, but just being that friend to them. If you are in a relationship and you're dating, make sure that you and this other person are reading the Bible together. I think that that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Good practice to have in discussing what you've read. I would also add, spending time alone is important as well, right. But I would recommend in public
places.
There's less likely, that things will get out of hand.
Temptations.
Yes, you'll hold it together better in public. But absolutely. I do think that it's important for you to spend time alone because you need to see how this person is when no one else is around as well.
Right.
If you're always around other people, then that person can wear a mask.
Possibly.
But
you're right.
When you're one-on-one, they'll let down their guard and show you their true selves. Right. Another thing that you and I did is that we did take a day trip.
Right.
With accountability, I would recommend that too, because you get to see the person. I studied, as David knows, I studied him. From our first date, I wanted to see how he treated the waitress. Then later on, I wanted to see how he treated his mother. If he had sisters, I wanted to see how he treated them. But I did see how he even treated his brothers. And that was important for me to see. So I would recommend that you get to see this person in different situations as well. have different seasons. You and I, in 8 months, we didn't we didn't get to experience all the different types of seasons that and circumstances that people could go through. But
right.
God's been faithful. He's been good to us. And I'd read in a book, or another tip that they gave was to spend time with your future in-laws. People don't think about that either, but
no, they don't.
See how well you get along with each other. How well do they get along with each other?
Yeah.
Because that's going to have an effect. If you do decide to marry this person, that's going to affect you.
Yeah. Marriage is not just a marriage of two individuals, but it's two families coming together.
Mm-hmm.
Often, if there are children already being brought into the relationship, it's going to be, stepchildren and all these other variables. And so you want to see that person and whether or not they'll have good chemistry, if they'll gel well with the people that they're going to be interacting with, because while you may get along with them, if the family doesn't get along well with them, that's trouble down the line. Yeah. And in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Amen. Please, 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 if I can advise anyone, don't make a decision on whether this person is the one solely based on your own synopsis. See whether or not other trusted friends, Christian friends, a mentor, Christian mentors, brothers and sisters in Christ that have a mature walk with God. What do you think about this person? And you never want to make a decision about marrying someone in a vacuum. That's why we always advocate for premarital counseling, getting someone who can talk with this other person and evaluate this other person from an outside perspective, who isn't swept up in the throes of the love and the passion that you have, but can really say, according to the scriptures, are they ready? Are you both ready for this relationship? And so we encourage that. Get as many counselors as you can, obviously Christian ones, not people that are just saying, yeah, he got money, or she looked good, or they got good credit. I mean, come on, there's more to it than just their looks and their bank account. It's whether or not this person is someone that you can commit to till death do you part. And there are a lot deeper questions we can ask, and we can delve a lot deeper into it. But again, we want you to take advantage of the Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. CCNN Classics messages as Pastor Tony goes through the Song of Solomon. There are gold nuggets within the Word of God that will give you guidance for how to approach love, sex, and relationships. And there's a reason why it is so important, because all throughout the Old Testament, time and time again, the children of Israel were told not to have relations and to marry these other tribes. And it wasn't because of a racial or ethnic thing. It had to do with the fact that when they coupled with these people, they would end up going and serving their gods. And we have to be very careful that when we link up and have communion with other people, if they're believers, then we're both going to serve the Lord. But if they're not a believer, if they're a half-hearted believer, if they're a false convert, if they're anything like that, they're going to take us away from Jesus, the ultimate lover of our soul. And we don't have to wonder whether or not he's the one, because he is the only one, the one true and living God. And he is the only one who lived a perfect life, died for you, and has promised to return to come and get you. So, amen. I mean, with that said, we want you to continue to rejoice in the Lord always, keep pressing on, and keep reaching in. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you were engaged and encouraged. If you're hungry for more content, check out our ongoing Old and New Testament teachings available on our app or through our website, calvarynn.church, and follow us on social media. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the Reaching In podcast belong solely to those individuals themselves and do not necessarily reflect the views of Calvary Chapel, Newport News.